Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today it is time to see how the robot I built out of scrap in 3-ish hours performed in fights. So a quick lay of the land before we get going here. I was very rushed at the end of this build. I was like drilling speed holes in this thing to get it underweight as fights were happening. So going into this first fight, I had no idea of anything. I knew that the drive would kind of sort of work. I didn't know if the weapon would spin up. I had never spun it up before at all. I knew that I was going to be running it off 5 volts, not the full 9 volts from the battery, but I didn't have time to do anything about that. Yeah, and also there was no time to name this thing. In fact, nobody named any of their Scrapbots. We fought under our own names. So my first fight up was against Cam, who had also built a vertical spinner. He just built a vertical spinner with some very, very chunky foam wheels.
2, 1, fight.
What is he doing?
My steering's backwards. Oh no. My wheels? They were like the bottle cap things. No, the like can cap things.
One minute 30 remaining.
It's like driving on ice.
1 minute remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done, builder.
So there was some electronics problems in there. First of all, yes, running the weapon on 5 volts was a bad idea. This was spinning very, very slowly throughout that entire fight, which wasn't helpful. It didn't get a lot of anything happening in that. Also, I was running off the actual mixing in the cheap ESCs we were given for Scrapbots, and that was really bad. I said at one point in that fight clip, it was like driving on ice, and that was because one of the wheels in particular just wasn't as responsive as the other one. So I think the mixing in here is a little bit slow, especially when you're going backwards. One of the wheels just like gives an extra half turn, which, oh, that was frustrating to try and deal with in the middle of a fight, while also having my drive back to front. So obviously he also had a vert. He had a vert made out of like a jar lid, I think, like a steel jar lid. And he was coming after my belt quite a number of times. Thankfully, he didn't ever manage to get that. I still managed to keep the belt for this fight and for the next fight. But obviously, yeah, this did not work particularly well at all. Like, reversing into him was way more effective than, like, spinning my weapon and running into him, which is... well, look, it's a Scrapbot. What did we expect out of this, to be perfectly honest? Especially a Scrapbot running on lower weapon power and on terrible mixing from an ESC. Yeah, it was amazing that it worked at all, really. Towards the end of the fight there, he did have a wheel coming out. I'm not really sure if that was a wheel slipping off the hub or if it was a motor being dragged out of a motor mount. Either way, it happened within the last like 20 seconds, so there wasn't really enough time to capitalize on it. Obviously, also with all of the issues I was having, there was no way I was ever going to try and get him down the pit. So that ended up being a draw. This is ARC's typical round robin system. We have a round robin group. We fight everybody in the group. It is 1 point for a draw, 2 points for a win, and 0 points for a loss. And you just need to get as many points as you can because the winner of the group goes through into the finals. With that in mind, I figured it was time to actually upgrade and improve our poor Scrapbot here. So I sat down and fixed the electronics. I put 9 volts into the power of the drive, or of the weapon, I should say, so that we actually get faster weapon speeds out of it. I also turned off the mixing in the robot and used my own mixing in the controller because that is a mixing that I know, it's very stable, and it's a lot better in terms of control than what we were running. With all of that done, it was time for our next fight, and that was up against Joel, who had built the smallest Scrapbot out of everybody. I'm still amazed he managed to get all of his components into the size he did.
Go.
Someone's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, man.
I count out the second. Get out the drum.
Yeah!
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well done, Ben.
Oh, so that was an interesting fight. A couple of things out of this fight. So obviously, very early on in the piece, Joel got flipped upside down and couldn't really drive from that position because his battery was up the top of his robot. Unfortunately, it wasn't my spinner that did that. It was the side of my robot. It was the vampire fang that I'd cut down that he run into and flipped himself over on. Having said that, the spinner was working better. It was at least faster in this fight. It looked more like a weapon. I think that's fair to say. Unfortunately, though, obviously, this gave me a chance to test the weapon on a fairly immobile target because Joel was upside down. Obviously, I wanted to try and flip him back over, keep the fight going, and I tried a number of times. But unfortunately, it turns out that using a rubber band, which is what this boy here is, rubber band as a belt is a bad idea. It's very springy, as you can see here. And all of that spring sucks torque out of the weapon. So the weapon was fine, like it would get up to speed, but because this weapon's not very heavy, it wasn't storing a lot of kinetic energy. It would slam into somebody, dissipate that kinetic energy, and then stop. And then the very, very springy rubber band weapon belt was basically stretching and not applying any further torque into the situation. I think it stretched a little bit and then it slipped. And yeah, it just meant that the power from the motor back here didn't make it through into the vert. And realistically, I probably should have just mounted the vert directly on the motor and then had another axle as a brace point on the other side, that probably would have been a much, much better solution, but we are far, far too far into this build to make a change like that. Now, the good news though is that out of all of this, I did end up upside down and worked out that with the weapon spinning, I can actually self-right, especially once I have the weapon up kind of like this and slam into the wall. It does allow some level of self-right. It's chaos, but it is a self-right of some form, which is helpful to know going through into the next couple of fights. Unfortunately though for Joel, because I could not like fix him being stuck upside down, he was stuck upside down in the corner and got counted out, giving us the win for this particular fight. Next up, we have Hugh, who's built a Thangomizer style design with a nice horizontal out the back, again made out of another like can jar lid thing, so a nice steel weapon with a good tooth on it. His only real problem here is his switch placement.
3, 2, 1, fight.
Where is it? There it is! Get right! I see it! There you go, you can have that. No. Wrong side, wrong side. Hey. So his switch was right there on the side, and unfortunately for him, he pushed it down to turn the robot on, and he was in a round robin group with 2 vertical spinners, me and Cam. However, for both of us, really, it wouldn't actually have been that much of an issue if he flicked it up to turn the robot on, because the weapons we're running, you have to like push a stick sideways to get them to spin one way, and then you could just reverse them by pushing the stick back the other way. So both of us could have literally just run the weapon upside down or the wrong way to hit his switch down if he had turned the switch over effectively. So obviously I was going after that switch all the time. That was all I wanted to do, was turn the robot off. And in the first like little bit there, I got a nice couple of drives on that side. I was hitting that side quite consistently, but missing the switch each and every time, slamming into a wheel, slamming into an armor panel, just not quite getting the weapon in where I wanted it. And then of course, some really good defensive driving from him. He managed to keep me away from that side for a little while. Unfortunately though, that streak did not last for him, and of course we managed to get in there and turn him off at that point, which was good. I was glad that the weapon could actually do something, having just seen that it very, very can't flip people over or do too much. At least I've done something with the weapon. I have disabled another robot with the weapon. For what that's worth. It was still a fun fight. It was interesting trying to like get the good angles on him, and also I was a little bit worried about his spinner. I wasn't sure what it would do to my wheels, but thankfully everything held up pretty well. In fact, there was very, very little damage on the robot from our entire round robin group. And with 2 wins and 1 loss, we were straight on through into the finals. And in the finals, we fought Chris, the other organizer of this event, and he had made a really small, compact little flipper.
3, 2, 1, fight.
That's so good.
Cheating with the other voltage.
Give me the wheel.
Push him out.
I've got 2 weapons.
It's like when you're a kid and spitting spikes you like.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Fingers. Yeah.
Put dents in your card.
10 seconds remaining.
So that was a difficult fight. This thing does not have any form of wedge or wedgelets or forks. It is taking the death roll approach of throw the weapon all the way out the front and just smack people with it. Unfortunately, the downside to this design is a nice flippy wedge, exactly like what Chris brought into this fight. He was very low to the ground, not that I had anything to combat that. He had a nice big piece of armor as his flipping arm, which meant that I really couldn't do anything with the weapon. He got under me every time. He was fairly quick off the mark as well. And of course, he flipped me over a number of times. And while this robot can self-right, which is good, and it also can drive upside down, which is also good, it is wild and uncontrolled while I'm trying to self-right because I'm running the weapon and slamming the weapon into the ground, so the robot's like jumping up and down all over the place, just causing traction issues, and it's just, that was a very, very hard matchup for this particular design. And realistically, looking into a Scrapbot version 2, I would change up the front of any kind of weapon that I had to be able to fight something like that, because his flipper was very, very well tuned for this competition. And yeah, I could have done better with this if I'd been thinking about doing something like that. I also probably could have spent some more time getting the weapon a little closer to the ground. At the moment, it's not close enough. And realistically, for a fight like this, it should have been as close to touching the ground as I possibly could have got it. So unfortunately though, with all of that, there was a lot of back and forthing in this fight, and by that I do mean that Chris pushed me around quite a lot. He was definitely in control of this entire fight. Damage was fairly negligible, and I lost this one on a judge's decision, which I think is quite fair. If you watch that fight back, and as I have done just recently, it's very, very clear that Chris won that fight. He was in control of that entire fight, and that's very fair. So unfortunately, that was us out of the competition. That was the semi-final, so technically the robot got 3rd or 4th place. We don't know because we didn't do a 3rd, 4th playoff. Because we only had time after the finals for one other thing, and we decided to do a rumble instead. Before we get to the rumble, I will very, very quickly show you a very small snippet of the final fight. It was Chris with his flipper versus Callum with his nails in a googly eye.
Best of luck. Charge! The wobbly boy.
Now when I go to third place. Okay. Do a group photo with my life. There's also a time frame.
Oh yeah. So there you go, that was part of the final fight. That final fight did last all 3 minutes and did go to a judge's decision. Callum with his nails and a googly eye got that one on a judge's decision, so very well done to him for taking out the entire event. But I just had to show you a part of that fight even though I wasn't in it, because to me that was like, they're two different sides of how you compete with a Scrapbot here. And I'm just excited and loved the fact that both of those builds made it all the way into the finals and ended up competing against each other to take the competition home. That was great. Loved it. But I did also say there was a rumble, and this is a chaotic rumble.
He's lifting up and did my dog.
Put the one around. Oh, well, the shovel now.
Come here, googly eyes.
Lost the wedge.
I've got you guys on my dog.
Yes, finally!
Did you trap someone in the mousetrap?
Oh, someone took the wheels off. No, not like this, man. On wheel.
Stop pushing it to the hammer, it's making it stop.
Uh-oh.
Everybody's ready.
This bit's gonna fill up very quick.
Or there's going to be one robot jam the top.
People worry about trying to get myself in the pit. Just trying to get myself in the pit. Why not? Another bus never what I was going to try and do.
Stuck in traffic on your way there.
I was stuck in there. And another bus never what I was going to try and do.
I don't think there's a pit anymore.
Yeah, I was going to try and block the pit. There's no pit anymore. Dragon's blocking it.
I think we're gonna clear the pit.
No, we'll leave it.
I'm stuck. And why is everybody waiting for me? Everybody just wait for me. One at a time. Literally on top of me. Hey, stop backing me. They say they need to do it. But my one's just
My nails jammed. I'm jammed on my nail.
1 minute, 30 remaining.
Come here, I shall hit your nails.
Control is the stretch.
Somebody push me, please.
Oh, I lost me belt. It's finally happened.
1 minute remaining.
Somebody push me on the wall. My dog's
Now my nail's been fixed.
No, my dog. Somebody knocked over my dog.
I already lost my belt, Callum. You're too late.
30 seconds remaining.
Oh no, I've got my belt wrapped around somebody's axle. Oh no. Well, we're stuck now.
Damn, I did it! Snapped your wheel.
15 seconds left.
He's taking a wheel.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Oh, I'm taking your wheel off.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's time.
What did I say? Pure chaos. And that was mostly because despite everybody's best efforts, not a lot of damage was actually done during Scrapbots. And the damage that was done was fairly easily repairable, so those people who were out of the finals had time to repair their robots and get them ready again to go into the Rumble. So we had most of our field go into the Rumble, which was beautiful. It was just absolute chaos. I did actually finally lose the rubber band belt, which honestly I am very surprised about. Like, this thing, it's very stretchy and very difficult to remove. Also, you may have noticed in other fights that the pulleys weren't perfectly aligned. Like the pulleys weren't like this, they were like this, kind of like that. So I thought that because they had spun the weapon totally fine the entire way through with this weird like unalignment problem in them, that there was never going to be any issue with the belt coming off, but it did actually happen in this fight. I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, if I'm going to do a Scrapbots again, which I hope we do a Scrapbots next year, I'd really, really like to. I don't think I'm going to belt drive my weapon again. I think I'm just going to put all of the output power on the N20 shaft, and if it breaks, it breaks. But there was a couple of other people, like most other people who ran weapons, were running weapons directly off the N20 shaft and survived the entire tournament with them. So I think it's definitely possible. The only real advantage of a pulley system would be to get more speed out of the weapon, which, yeah, would be good to have more speed out of the weapon. But if you can't get the torque through the belt that you're putting down, then the speed isn't really useful to you. So yeah, I don't know. It's something to consider when I go back and do Scrapbots again, because again, I really, really want to do Scrapbots again. We are getting towards the end of this video. The final thing I want to say here is thank you for watching all the way through. And I have like 2 hours worth of actual build content for this this robot. I filmed 2 hours worth of footage. I also filmed a couple of extra fights. If you would like to see some of that in more like elongated form in the future, please let me know in the comments down below. What I'm thinking is I might do a stream at some point. I might sit down, do a stream, react to some comments, and like throw up build video bits and fight bits and all that kind of stuff from Scrapbots, and just chill out and have a bit of fun time with you out there as well. Rather than like putting up a 2-hour video, do it as a 2-hour stream, and we can just kind of like, you guys can ask me questions in real time, and you know, I can answer things as we go, and you can see a little bit more of the process of building a robot out of scrap. Anyway, if you want something like that, leave me a comment down below, and I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.